Yeah, I love the ruminants because of that. We always can do things that no other organism can do.
All right, welcome everybody to this episode of the Dairy Podcast Show. I'm your host for today, Gail Carpenter. I'm the State Dairy Extension Specialist for Iowa State University, and I'm joined today by Dr. Elias Bungenstab from AB Vista. Elias is the Global Technical Manager for Ruminants from AB Vista. He was born and raised in Brazil, and he holds a bachelor's degree in agricultural engineering from UFMS in Brazil. He has a master's in agriculture and feedlot management from Texas A&M University, a PhD in ruminant nutrition, and a postdoc, both from Auburn University. He has quite a varied experience from consulting to working at feed additive companies and as an animal science professor. He's currently based in College Station, Texas, and he provides technical advice and product development and support to the AB Vista Global Ruminant team. Welcome to the Dairy Podcast Show, Elias.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. And I have been running the Global Technical ruminant side for AB Vista, supporting our entire business around the world. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
All right. Can you start by telling us a little bit about what exactly your role entails at AB Vista?
Yeah, I work with the technical support, like I said. So I run every technical question in the ruminant side comes to me, and then I find an answer if I don't have one. And I also work on helping developing new products and testing them and making sure they work and giving a positive ROI. And so everything that's related to the ruminant products, it comes to me, and I sort it out and help the team to succeed.
And I know your position is global right now. How much time are you actually spending in Texas, or are you getting out and trotting around all over the world?
Interesting enough, I have not traveled a lot this year. I went to Brazil in January, and that was it. And last year, I had a couple of international travels. And after COVID, we learned a lot in terms of working remotely and with our Teams meetings. So Teams meetings I have almost daily, and sometimes in early mornings when I am working with Fastback. But traveling, it's not been unbearable lately. It has been pretty nice. I have a couple of scheduled travels for the summer, so already kind of bumping the agenda there.
Yeah, it seems like it used to be being close to an airport was important. Now it's having a good internet connection.
Exactly, yeah. The internet is important, yeah.
Yeah. What's your favorite place that you've gotten to visit?
On my job or anywhere kind of
well, we'll say with your job and keep it on track with the discussion today.
No, great. Yeah, I think Europe is interesting. Going to England, Italy, those kind of places, you have a lot of interesting different cultural shocks that we get, but it's really interesting. So yeah.
Very cool. Well, I know when I think of AB Vista, I think of your enzyme products, and I think of fiber digestibility. And so that's kind of where my mind goes when I think about your company. But I know when we were kind of talking beforehand, you wanted to chat a little bit about NIR technology and using NIR and calibrations. And I know we're shopping around in my lab group right now to see if we can adopt some of these technologies. So I'm really interested in what your thoughts are on utilizing NIR technology.
Oh, definitely, yes. We at AB Vista, we have been developing for quite a while the service. And NIR, like every company or a lot of companies, have the equipment available. And the equipment is not the big thing. The biggest thing is having the curves and the calibration. So we are accumulating a lot of knowledge, and our calibration is pretty heavy. And so we have a lot of data to rely on, and we are improving that as we go. I don't know if you met Chris, or NIR guru. Unfortunately, he passed this February. But he did a lot of work on this area and developed the service, Keith Petrovics. And he had developed the service to where we are today. And like I said, he's continuing to improve. And we have a very nice set of data that we can rely on to test any forage, or not any forage, but most forage that we have the curve for in the field. and get that data right on our hand in our iPad or laptop or any kind of technical device you have.
I know NIR is it's a really exciting, and it seems like kind of a exploding field right now. And the technology is advancing so quickly. You know, we have handhelds, like you mentioned now. What do you think is next? What do you think is the next opportunity? 5, 10 years ago, what do you think we're going to be using NIR for?
And I think in the formulation, it's where it's going. It's a greatest tool for the nutritionist, and I think having that data coming straight from the field to the computer, and you have that formulation adjusted and sent back to the feed mixer. I think all that connection, it's close to it, but I think we'll fine tune it to get more and more in that area and get everything instantaneously measured. And not only that, but we are also working on the back end and scanning manure so you can get both sides of the picture. And then if something is going wrong in the manure or you have too much nutrients being lost, then you can adjust and make those changes. So we are working on both ends. The manure calibration is still small because we started this business not too long ago, but that's something that we are heavily working on to get the full picture of the nutrition.
What are you thinking about? What nutrients are you looking at in manure? Are you looking at dry matter? Are you looking at fecal starch? What specifically are you keeping your eye on?
Yeah, dry matter and fecal starch is the biggest one. The fecal starch, I think, is the one that will be the biggest driver. We have gone to measure NDF, ADF, those kind of other nutrients, but the fecal starch, I think, is the driver because you can make assumptions based on lab work that are pretty reliable. So we are working a lot on that field, on that particular nutrient.
Very cool. Nice. It's cool to hear that that's coming down the pipeline.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like I said, and speaking of digestibility, right? When I think about AB Vista, I think about your enzymes, and some of those products that you have available. What impact do enzymes have on our forages, particularly corn silage? Where do you see enzymes fitting in our dairy operations?
Great. I'm glad you asked that because we have worked quite a bit on corn and grass silage, and we always saw on our work in the lab on testing the forage with and without or enzyme for fiber digestion. And every time we added that enzyme to the forage, to this corn silage, we increase in about 180 to 200 kilocalories per kilo of dry matter. So it's quite a significant increase in the energy that you release, and that's gross energy that we release. And so that improves the usage of that energy of that forage by the animal quite a bit. So we have done quite a bit of lab work, and now we are working on the field with that and kind of accounting for more energy when you use our enzyme.
Can you walk me through? I don't want you to give away anything proprietary or anything, right? But can you kind of talk to me about what that process looks like from the idea to actually being able to use something on farm? Because there's so many enzymes, right? Like you talk about enzymes and fiber digestion. It's kind of limitless. So how do you screen the enzymes that you're using, and kind of what does that look like from like the initial, like, oh, we want to find an enzyme to help with fiber digestion, to, okay, we're actually going to be able to start feeding this to cows? And again, you don't have to say anything proprietary or give away any trade secrets or anything. I'm just curious about how that kind of looks for you guys.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Well, AB Vista is known for being expert on enzymes, and we have been working with enzymes for monogastric for a long time. And then the way we look at it is like, well, the ruminants, what is the most ingredient used is normally, I mean, I know we use quite a bit of grain, but still fiber is important. Now, if you put a fiber there just for being the source of fiber and not digestible, you might lose that space. So the first thing is, how can we work on that? So then what's fiber is NDF, ADF, lignin, how we measure it. So lignin is not touchable, so we can't do much there. So we start looking at what can we do in terms of NDF, ADF. NDF xylanase would be the one that would digest that. And for AGF, xylanase and cellulase. So cellulase is the big one. So we use those both. We started working on those two to see what amounts we needed, how that would work. And then finally, we fine tune to get the right amount of those two mixed together. And then also, those are enzymes that naturally the microorganism, the rumen, release before they can get to the fiber, because as we learn, there is a need to pre-digest that fiber so the microorganisms can get to it and digest it and get the energy out of it. And so with that, we pre-digest it with our xylanase and cellulase, and then we get to the microorganism the pre-digested fiber, and they can get all the energy possible out of it. So that's how we can improve that 180 to 200 kilocalories per kilogram there.
So how can we make sure that our fiber is digested for maximum efficiency? Is it just enzymes, or what else can we be doing to make sure that we're getting the most out of our fiber?
The biggest thing we always look in fiber is it needs to be digested in the rumen. So if we are in the rumen, we need to have that rumen in a good environment for the fibrolytic microorganism. Now, in that manner, we have to make sure the pH is not dropping too low, because we use quite a bit of grain, high energy diets. So with that, we can use our other product that's Cell. So it's a live yeast, and it can help stabilize that pH, scavenger that oxygen, and make sure the fibrolytic microorganisms thrive on that fiber and digest it well.
I know that we're working well. This is the Dairy Podcast show, right? And our listeners that want to know more about beef nutrition can listen to the Beef Podcast or show. But when we talk about using enzymes for fiber digestion, is that just for dairy diets, or what other enzymes are available for other ruminants, or are we mostly just focusing on forage for our beef cattle as well?
For beef, we use we focus on fiber on any ruminants, because it's the main ruminants are designed to digest fiber. So with the rumen, and so we focus on fiber. But we have other products that we are working on that also help to digest help to improve the use of that starch or that energy. So we have another product that's called Optipartum that we recommend for beef and dairy when you have a high starch diet, that we can help there too.
I know we spend a lot of time, or at least I spend a lot of time in my work talking about making sure you're getting the best quality forages that you can get. And we've come a long way, it seems like, in the past several decades on making sure that we have those forage hybrids that have really great fiber digestion. So where do you see the enzymes kind of fitting in? Can every farm benefit from using these, or is there kind of a cutoff where it's like, okay, your forage quality is good enough that enzymes aren't really going to add anything extra? So where do you, I don't know if that question makes a lot of sense.
It does. And there is an interesting point there, because normally when we have a total mixed ration, we don't measure only the corn silage or the grass silage or the forage source. We measure the entire diet. So normally on the entire diet, we can see improvements. So our work is mostly done now that we did all the work in the lab with a particular forage. Now our work is done in a TMR. So if you have a good TMR, you still can get more out of that fiber. Now, with that said, like, for example, we did a work back in 2011, I think it was before me that ABV studies was done, but it was done with different substrates. And there are some substrates that we don't see a whole lot of improvement. And one of those is alfalfa hay. So if you are heavily, and again, alfalfa hay is one of those that the fiber is quite a bit lignin, because of ligniums. They are higher in lignin. In lignin, we can do much. So that's kind of the approach that we get. Of course, when you mix alfalfa hay with other forages in a TMR, then we will see some improvement. But if you have a corn silage and those kind of things, you will have bigger improvements, let's put that way. So
I always say all forage is useful as long as it's not like bad, right? Like if it's moldy or if it's spoiled,
Yeah.
like obviously we want to make sure that we're not feeding that to especially our higher producing cows. So is enzymes kind of an opportunity to maybe unlock the potential of some of those forages that we have to feed? We're not just, we have it available, it has to be fed. And, not every year is going to work perfect, right? Like some years you're going to be over wet or over dry. And so our enzymes kind of an opportunity to unlock the potential of those forages that we have to feed, but might not necessarily want to in ideal circumstances.
Oh, definitely. Yes, that's a good. And again, with that work that was done back in different forages, we even did in straw, and it improved quality of straw. Now we always need straw in the. You have more than me there because you are in the cold area. So when it's really cold, we know that there are bales of straw put in the pan so the animals can warm up and all that. But then and a lot of people use the straw as one of the ingredients in the diet, and you can improve the quality of that straw as well. So there is work done there too. So it's like you said, the not so convenient forage or the year that the corn silage wasn't put it, I mean, there was a frost and the quality dropped, we can still get more out of it with using and as long as you have that NGF and AGF that we can work on.
So this is maybe an off the wall question. And so if you don't have a response to it, that's fine. But I know when I've talked to students before and so when we talk about fiber, that's, the first thing you start with. You got lignin, and you can't digest lignin. It's not really fiber, but it's, included in the ADF, NDF. And so we kind of start with like, well, okay, we don't have microbes in the rumen that can digest lignin. But I remember learning in my nutrition class in college that termites can digest lignin, and then they've got the enzymes that can break it down. So if you could put on, and I don't think this is near future, but if you could put on, like, hop in a time machine and look into the future, is there an opportunity to maybe use like genetic modification or like there are some species that can digest it. Is that in the cards at any point, whether that's 100 years from now or 50 years from now, that we might be able to actually start unlocking some of that lignin too?
Well, I think we could. I mean, I don't think anything would be out of the picture, out of the wall. I mean, we always have to consider everything that we can work. And I like that thinking, because when you think about who does what, and if we can isolate that enzyme and make it stable in an environment that we need it to digest that lignin, I think it would be great to get to break that out. I mean, I don't know how much value that would add.
Okay, yeah.
And it's a big question. It's like, is that going to be a positive ROI? Because that's one thing we always have in mind, and we have to be mindful of that, is that the customer needs to have a positive ROI in order to invest in a product like that. But I like your thinking. Yeah, we have to think outside the box all the time to be successful. So yeah.
Well, yeah, I think that's a really good point. Lignin is a pretty small percentage of most of our plants, and
Yeah.
and the amount of research dollars that would have to go into a product like that might not have a positive ROI. I just know I've lost track of all of the students who have asked me if we can, like, well, why don't we genetically modify a rumen microorganism that can, and I've always tell them it's outside of my pay scale. So I figured I'd ask you, since it's in your pay scale. So
No, and I appreciate, like I said, nothing is outside of our thinking or radar. But again, we always have to be careful where we invest and how much return we can get. But yeah, definitely is in it should be in our radar for sure.
well, we'll bring it back to earth, right? And to the current time. And maybe ask something a little bit more pertinent to feeding cows today. How do yeasts benefit from these enzymes, and how do you? I know yeast is something I recommend a lot to improve fiber digestion. I think it's really well proven that a good yeast can have a positive impact on fiber digestion. How does your company work with yeasts? And how can the yeast benefit from some of those enzyme technologies?
Well, yeast is always welcome because it's the live yeast for me is very important in terms of keeping that rumen pH. And we know that fibrolytic microorganisms that will digest that fiber will have to have an ideal pH to thrive on. And so if we can add something that's not breaking the bank, because yeast is not a very expensive technology and it's a very cost effective. So if we can add that to the diet and keep that rumen pH to the ideal and scavenger that oxygen and help the microorganism to survive, and then they will be able to digest that fiber better. If you invest in an enzyme to pre-digest, but you don't have the microorganism to digest and make that energy available to the animal, that's going to be going back to the back end. So that's important to keep in mind. And again, with the live yeast that we have a high CFU count, the highest in the market with the dose we recommend. And that helps not only the microorganism because of the pH and everything, but being a live yeast, but then also we have to think that the live yeast is going to die. So if you have a high CFU, that's going to become feed for the microorganism as well. So you kind of get two rabbits for the price of one. Let's put it that way.
So not all yeasts are created equal. That's what
definitely not. Yeah. But everything we do in our development of products, we keep the ROI in mind. So we are not going to develop something that's going to break the bank and not bring the bucks back to the customer. So the ROI is important always.
So you mentioned high CFU. Can you explain what that means for our listeners who might not be aware?
Yes. So CFU stands for colony forming units. So the microorganisms, they multiply, but they are kind of live. We have a lot of live microorganisms there. The Saccharomyces cerevisiae is the microorganism in the live yeast. And so we have in our yeast, we have 20 billion colony forming units per gram. And so, for a dairy cow, we recommend 3 grams. So you're talking about 60 billion. And 60 billion with that, I mean, there is no other company that offers that much as a dose. And so that makes us a very interesting choice. And I know I'm biased because I'm related to the company, but still, it's something that we always hang our hat on, is that we have a lot of CFUs. And they will work scavenging that oxygen. So once they are activated in their environment, in the raw environment, they need temperature, moisture, and substrate. And we get all of those three in the rumen. So once the animal ingests that live yeast that's not active, it becomes activate. It's going to start scavenger because it needs to survive. So it consumes the oxygen in that rumen environment. And then it helps to stabilize the pH there. And then once they die, that high CFU again will count as feed for the other microorganisms. So that's the way it goes.
So it gets recycled, basically.
It's kind of, yeah. in a simple way, yes, that's exactly it.
The ruminant doesn't waste a lot, right? She's kind of designed to make sure that she's getting the most she can out of everything. So it's good when we can help her out with that a little bit. She's already got the mechanisms in place to be able to make some of those recycling choices on her own.
Exactly. That's perfect. Yeah. I love the ruminants because of that. We always can do things that no other organism can do.
Yeah. Well, that makes it fun, right? And also, I think a little bit challenging. I know you mentioned that AB Vista's done a lot with monogastrics. And I mean, I'm biased because I'm also a ruminant nutritionist, but I feel like monogastrics have a lot figured out because it's a lot simpler organism to be able to do. So what was that? Maybe you weren't at the company at the time, but what was that like, making that transition to the ruminant world from the monogastric world? Was it an easy transition, or?
No, I think it was quite challenging, and it's still challenging. I know that one thing that we pride ourselves at ABV says that the company started with scientists. So science is a big pillar of our organization. And so there was quite a bit of research and development done. Like I said, developing that live yeast, is selecting the right strain, And now that it went quite a bit of work there. And again, we didn't stop there. We have been working with our fibrinolytic enzyme that we have been doing a lot of work, lab work that has been done that show that which enzymes are necessary, which ones are the most, like you said, you have to select for the most effective one. And then also we got to a point that now we have to prove that it works not only in the lab, but it works in the animals. And we have been doing quite a bit of that work. And there is one thing that we do, and we know it works, but it's hard to convince our customers, is that because we have extra energy, we can reduce the energy and get the same result. But that one is a hard one to get somebody to trust, because if you look at it, you say, well, yeah, I'm going to drop the energy in my diet and I'm going to get the same result. Yeah, you're kidding me, right? So that's kind of a hard one to get. But we are working quite a bit in terms of showing those results in not only in universities, but in also field trials that we can prove that it happens.
It's like more miles per gallon on a car, right?
Exactly, yes. And yeah.
So can you tell me anything about the effect of your products on performance, production health? We've talked about, it's unlocking some of that energy potential. It's stabilizing that rumen pH. What's the actual impact on the animal itself?
We have done quite a bit of work in like I said, in the lab, in the university, and also in the field, and we have seen improvement in more than 2 pounds, 2.5 pounds of milk. It's about a kilo. That it's being from Brazil, we mix kilos and pounds a lot.
I speak metric. It's fine.
Yeah, I know it. Yeah, you do. Yeah, and so, but and then when we started using it in the beef, it was interesting because we also saw improvement in we saw improvement sometimes in average daily gain and sometimes in carcass weight. So there is improvement there. And this is something that brings back to the dairy. Sometimes in the past we had used it and didn't see improvement in milk. And a lot of people said, yeah, it didn't work. Now, there is an interesting point that we found when we started using it in beef, because beef we measure from the beginning to the end. You will weigh the animal in the beginning and then you go all the way to the carcass. And so there is kind of ways to measure not only quantity, quality, and everything. In milk, you measure a lot of milk solids, because that's what the dairyman sells. But then we don't measure a whole lot in terms of cow health, cow body scores. I mean, there is measurements, reproduction, and those kind of things. They are not directly related. And when we have a high producing cow, there is quite a bit of energy she gets the maintenance covered and then everything else goes to production. And that's production. Now, we cannot tell that cow when we put more energy there if she's going to produce more or get a little bit relaxed and get a little more maintenance going. So that partitioning of that energy is not something that up to us to decide, is the cow to decide. And we have seen, and that's the way I see with looking at the results in the beef. Sometimes we don't see milk improvement, but for sure that cow is getting in a better shape, getting a better reproduction. And if we measure a year or a year and a half from now, you will see a bigger calf and those kind of things that are not measured. And sometimes people say, well, I use it, it didn't prove anything. But then it might be there later on that if you get the full picture. And that's the reason we are talking about the matrix or reducing the energy in the diet, because then you will see that it shows that you are reducing that energy and giving that energy back. So
do you think most of the benefit, when you see a benefit, do you think most of that comes from that additional energy that you're getting out of the forages? Or do you think it's from that stabilizing that rumen and making that rumen more efficient? What do you have any thoughts on? I know you haven't proven one or the other, but do you have any hunches about where that mechanism is?
I think it's a combination. I would say it's a combination, because every time, and it goes with ourselves, when we have some problems in our stomach, we have to be using something to help stabilize that stomach to get better. And also we have to get some energy slowly to improve. So every time you have a challenge, and so that's why I said both, is because I think we have to combine the stabilization of the rumen and also provide that energy that the animal can get back. So when you have a challenge, I think you need both. And in the normal days, I think the rumen is always challenged because the way we do our nutrition, we always push for performance, and then the challenge is there every day, I think. So that's why I make that parallel.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that you point out the milk components too. I know when I get questions about improving components or producers struggling with low fat or low protein, the first place I always go is, okay, is the rumen happy? And if we can keep that rumen happy, that's where I think we drive a lot of that component production. So yeah, I like that. I like that insight that they kind of play in hand with each other, because we can't expect good outcomes if we don't get that rumen right.
Exactly. And for fat, for example, we need that fiber, the good quality fiber, to produce the fat. So if we can improve the quality of that fiber with a fibrolytic enzyme, and then the fat is there. So that's kind of the way I see why we don't see a drop in solids when we use it.
Very good.
So it gain both ways.
So you kind of mentioned some different research projects that you've had going on. Is there any other research projects that you want to shout out or talk about that have kind of looked at some of those live animal impacts?
Yeah, we are working on, like I said, field trials that where we can prove the effect, and we are kind of betting a lot in terms of the matrix or reducing the energy. So we are doing a large trial on that to prove that we can produce, and because we can measure everything in the beef, so we're doing that in beef. So we are doing that, and as soon as we have the results, we'll definitely be glad to share that again. And hopefully, you invite me again to go to talk about that and share those results.
Are you gonna be in Ottawa this summer for ADSA?
Yes, I am. Yeah, I
All right.
actually have, and I'm glad you mentioned, I actually have an abstract to present. So,
All right.
and yeah, it was not, I didn't do the work, but I am presenting it. I was lucky enough to get that data that was sitting there. So we were able to analyze and show an improvement in that one in particular was palm kernel extract.
Okay.
We improved the digestion of that substrate. That's not an easy one to digest, by the way. I know it's not very used in the US, but yeah.
Is that going to be a poster or an oral presentation?
I put for oral, but I read in the guidelines that they might change it. So as it stands right now, it's going to be oral, but I don't know. I'm waiting to see the agenda to make sure that I think oral will be better, because then we can interact and present and show the results there. But yeah, I don't know which one you prefer.
Yeah. So we'll tell listeners, if they want to check that out, to search for probably your name in the abstract book when it comes out.
Exactly. Yeah. Please do. Yeah. My name or AB Vista, you'll find us there. Yeah.
Perfect.
You'll be there, I assume.
I'll be there. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm not doing a poster. I've got a grad student doing a poster.
Yeah.
So.
You have that privilege to have your
Exactly.
grad student.
Yeah. So I get to go just listen to talks and do, what a conference is actually for, and enjoy other people's science, and let the grad students do the presenting. So
No, yeah, I appreciate that, and I always appreciate having there, done that. I appreciate the grad student work, and yeah, that's and it gives you time to go see my presentation, right?
exactly.
So,
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
that'll be great. That'll be sweet. Mhm.
Any other last thoughts before we move on to our big three questions?
Well, no, I think we covered everything. I think, like I said, we always work at ABV stuff with the size in mind, but always looking at the pocket, like always applying science to help benefit the customer to get the most out of anything that they're feeding. And not only get the most, because you get to a point where, like we talked about, we challenge that rumen a lot. So we don't want to only get the most, but get the animals in a better shape. So with all our products, that our goal is to provide more profit to the customer, but also give a better life to those animals. And there is other topics that we didn't even touch on, but there is other things that we're working on in terms of emissions and all that service that we are also working, and we have quite a bit of experience, but I know the time is constrained. So, but that's something that we always have the best interest of our customers in mind, and we always want to provide the most with a positive ROI. So that's kind of our main goal in the company, with the most science we can get behind our products, of course.
Very good.
It's time for our famous three. AB Vista helps dairy producers maximize their herd potential with feed intelligence and targeted ingredients to optimize rumen function and overall animal health. From young calves to lactating dairy cows, AB Vista is here to combine industry-leading products and optimal feed strategies to increase your ROI. When your goal is to help animals reach their full potential, health matters. Diamond V offers a fresh perspective on animal health, a perspective that supports gut health, strengthens immunity, and ultimately enhances performance. For those who choose to invest in keeping healthy animals healthy, feeding Diamond V makes a statement about another dimension of profit, where margins are measured by confidence in your future. To get a fresh perspective, visit diamondv.com, because animal health deserves a healthier approach.
All right, so we'll move into our big three questions that we ask every guest. So our first one is, what is your favorite dairy-related book or resource?
Oh, that's a good question. I normally I know it's very customer oriented, but it's good to know what our customers are looking. So I think Progressive Dairyman is a good one source to read what is going out to our customers, what they are looking into information and all that. So I like that one. And it's good to be in the conversation when, oh yeah, you saw that article. Yes. And that's what, yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting.
I know I have a growing stack of I will read all of these articles, and I gotta get caught up on my on my stack of magazines that I'm going to read someday.
That's not an easy task, definitely.
Yeah.
With everything else, with all the team meetings,
Right,
you gotta
yeah.
put them in there.
Journal of Dairy Science has a new one every month. Now they have JDS Communications. I got Hordes. I got Progressive. It's a lot of reading. I can have a full-time job just reading.
Definitely do, yes.
So our second question is, what is your favorite non-dairy or non-agriculture related book or resource?
Well, there's an interesting book that I read. It was a long time ago, but it kind of made me think a lot. Is the title of the book is "Who Moved My Cheese?" I can't remember the author right now, but it's a very interesting book that we normally tend to blame the others, but that book makes us blame ourselves, and instead of asking "Who moved my cheese?" So it's an interesting book.
Well, it's kind of dairy related too, right? It's got
Oh,
cheese
there's
on it.
cheese
Yeah.
there, yes. True. You said not dairy related. I'm sorry.
It's far enough removed. I think we'll count it. Yeah.
Okay. Appreciate it.
And so our last question that we ask all of our guests is, what sets successful dairy professionals apart from those who are not?
That's an interesting question, and I think the biggest thing I see with the more progressive producers and customers is that they invest in technology and science, like I said. So they read, they study, they look for, and so I think looking for those new developments, new science, new technology, things that are going to help them in the long run. And I think the technology is, and I know it's kind of cliche because everybody talks about technology, but I think it's what's moving us. And I think if we don't invest in that and are not looking for those and improving that, I don't think we can succeed. So I think the dairyman sets apart, and any dairyman is set apart when they are looking for those information and technology.
Lifelong learners.
Exactly.
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap up with that. Before we let you go, do you have anywhere where people can find more information about you or your products or connect with you online?
Definitely, yes. I want to first thank all the listeners for your time, and we have an abvista.com website where you can find more information and find contact information, and you can look for me and my colleagues, and we will be glad to answer any question that come forward. And I want to thank you for inviting me, of course.
Yeah, it's been great to chat, and I'm looking forward to maybe connecting with you this summer too.
I hope so. Yeah, we'll see you in Canada for sure. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much, Elias, for joining us today, and look forward to seeing more of what you guys are putting out.
I appreciate. Thank you for the invitation and the time spent here. I appreciate very much, and thank you for our listeners too.